Good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending on what part of the country that you are in. Welcome to the webinar today. We're going to be talking about the new Blueprint software. I've been working on this software for years now, really, and this is a key part of our process here at Life Benefits. Looking forward to share that with you today. I'm going to start with a conceptual overview of how we use the system. You'll see how it fits into our process. How we work with it with clients. You can see how it might fit into your process for working with clients as well. Then we'll get into some examples. I'll give you some high-level examples. I'll share all the details about it with you. And then after all of that, after you have the information, then we'll dive into more detail, get to some of the specifics. We'll go through a few examples where I actually pull up the software, show how it installs, and all of that. That part of the video you'll be able to use as a reference as you actually start using the software then with your own clients and prospects. So as we get started here, this is the icon for the new Blueprint software. You know I've developed the Loan Manager software that's available to this day on moneytools.net. People use this for tracking loans. The new software is a different type of software altogether. It's based on a piece of software that we developed several years ago to show people how they could pay off their debts quickly using policy loans, using policies in that mix there. This new software is 10 times more powerful. The calculations go down so much, it's so much more fine-tuned. You're going to be able to use it in a lot of different situations, and it's not just for debt. We talk to our clients about being a money manager. So there's different things that they can do as they are being their own money manager. One of them is debt payoff. Other things that people are looking at is financing major personal expenses that they have, or maybe they're looking at free cash flowing, making sure the cash flow is going to work out with opportunities they're taking advantage of, investing in business ideas, or maybe even other types of investments. Ideally, they're looking to create passive income, and they want that guaranteed foundation with the policies there as well. So as we're looking at the policy design and how that fits into this, here are some of the basics that we start from. And my dad uses the first one all the time. He says it has to be affordable and it has to be comfortable. Comfortable and affordable. You can say that either way you like. The affordable part, he says, if it's not affordable, you can't do it. If it's not comfortable, you won't do it. And so that's where we start when figuring out, how much are we going to put towards the premium on a whole life insurance policy here. Has to be comfortable, has to be affordable. Then from there, we have the premium amount to work with. We work from the premium amount to the face value. We generally design the policy for maximum cash value, which means we minimize the death benefit like Nelson Nash taught. And so usually we end up with around a 30 to 70 or a 40 to 60 split. That's base insurance to the paid up additions rider. All right. Then we can add the appropriate riders, WPD, terminal illness, whatnot. Then we can decide which company. Some companies are better for children or adults, or better for smaller face amounts. It's not usually a huge competition, but that's where we look at the which company we might put the policy with. And then when we're actually working with the client, we focus on the guarantees that they're looking at on the policies. Once they have the policies, then we can look at some other considerations as well. And these other considerations sometimes come into play even before they have the policies. For example, outstanding debt. What should they do about that? What about other expenses, investments, or cash flows that they know that are on the horizon? Some people then will get into the question of retirement. How close are they to retirement? Multiple policies do provide more options when you go to take passive income for retirement, but if you're too close, it can also limit your options, and you don't want that to happen. Basically, we're trying to answer the question of how much money do you need. We're going to focus on the first two items today. The last three are more of a different process that we go through with the client. So the outstanding debt. When we talk about this one, the question comes up, well, should I pay off debt before I buy a policy? Should I pay off all of my debt? Should I pay off some of my debt? What debt should I pay off? And then the second one comes up, it's more of a question of, well, with everything I'm doing, what size policy should I purchase for the best overall results? These are the questions that we're going to be able to answer with the new software. And so as we look at the big picture, figuring out what size policy is going to be best for a client, we sometimes need to run these what-if scenarios or projections. Now, insurance company software, they run illustrations very well, but it's very limited outside that scope when you're applying it to the rest of a client's financial picture, what they're doing in the big picture. So now, as humans, we tend to anchor on specific numbers, especially if they're nice-looking big numbers. But when we do projections, it's actually more valuable to have a range of possible outcomes. So you're going to see that in the software. We can create one scenario, use that like as our control example, and then we can compare. We can make a copy of it, make a few changes, and see how that changes the picture. And that lets us see, and also lets the client see, well, if I choose option A, it'll be better with more guarantees than if I choose option B. That's what we're looking for at the end of the day. So the name of the new software, I call it DP Blueprint, stands for Debt Payoff Blueprint. It just doesn't just pay off debts. Okay, obviously we can put in expenses, investments, other cash flows in here as well, and you'll see how that works. The primary purpose is the debt payoff. That's what it was originally designed around, so that's what we call it. And then we'll be able to add other types of blueprints to this based on the different types of scenarios people are looking at. So the process that we go through when a client needs a blueprint, generally my dad will meet with the client, and not every client needs a blueprint. Sometimes the cash flow, you can figure out what's happening with the cash flow. They know what they can save towards a new premium. They know it's going to be comfortable and affordable, and they have a fairly a small amount of expenses or a specific goal in mind that they're going to be using this policy to attain. Blueprint's not necessarily needed there. In the more complex situations where we do use a blueprint, then my dad makes that call. He says, we really need to look at the numbers a little bit closer, see what's going to be best for your situation. Sometimes this happens before they buy the policy. Sometimes it happens after they buy the policy. But when we decide they need a blueprint, the first step is we're going to collect information. I'll show you the information we collect a little bit later. Then I have a follow-up call. So dad turns them over to me at this point. They're going to have a follow-up call with them, and I'm going to go through the information, ask any questions that I have, clarifications I know we need to make so that we can run the calculations the way that we need to do. We're going to run the scenarios, then I'm going to share the results with the client, and then we're going to have the follow-up, whether it's writing policies, or if they already have the policies, then we're following up in some other manner, and they're taking the actual action steps to put that into process. So that's the basic process. And it's been able to help us help a lot more clients in different ways than we used to be able to. And I know it's going to be able to help you do the same. So here we're going to start with a visual overview of a process that you can draw out for clients. And then what's really nice about this visual overview is it's going to come over, and you'll be able to see this at work on the spreadsheet format, on the blueprints as well. So here's how this works. When a client comes in, we often talk to them about the 10-20-70 principle. That is, you take 100% of your income and you divide it up. 10% is yours to keep. This comes from The Richest Man in Babylon book. Okay, so 10% is yours to keep. That should be going to some form of savings. The 20% is the maximum that should go to minimum payments on creditors. And that's creditors, we don't count the mortgage as part of that. That's more of a living expense, because if you didn't have a mortgage, you'd probably be renting. So the 20% is the maximum toward the minimum payments on consumer debts. The 70% then goes to lifestyle. So here's how we can draw that out. This is a nice little visual overview. So here's your lifestyle items, 70% of your income over here. Also, something that comes out of your 70% is protection, usually in the form here of term life insurance and maybe disability income insurance. You're protecting your income, you're protecting your life. Term insurance for many people is nice, inexpensive starting out with. Of course, we know it's not going to be there forever, so we also need to plan with some whole life, at least some to start with, possible. So that the protection here, though, term life insurance, disability, that's going to be paid from the 70%. Then we have the money manager account over here. And this is where your 10% goes. at least 10% of your income. If you can, this is a guideline, so it doesn't have to be a strict rule. So if you can save more than 10%, good for you. That's going to go right over to that section. And Bobby, I see you have a question. Yes, this is live. All right, so the money manager account, you put your 10% in there, and you also put that can be for emergency funds, but you're also building an asset right here. This can have some protection and a component of equity to it. This is the whole life insurance. It can be paid from the money manager account or directly from your 10%. This whole life insurance and any other emergency funds that you might be keeping, say, in your cash values, you can always take a policy loan to access those values. So this is the basic picture on this side. Then over here on this side, you have your debts, cash flows, investments, whatever it is. And if it's debt, then you only want 20% of your income be the maximum that goes to those minimum payments. So this gives us a nice overview. Now, when you're drawing this out for a client, you can do this. You can kind of animate it a little bit. You can say, so after a few months, you're going to have some equity that's built up in here. And so you'll be able to take anything that's left over after you reserve whatever you want for your emergency fund here. You'll be able to move it over, and you'll be able to focus it on paying down debt number one. Pretty soon, debt number one will be paid off. Now the cash flow that was going to debt number one, you roll over, you work on paying debt number two off. Anything, again, that's left over here on these columns will come over, work on debt number two. Pretty soon, all your bad debts are going to be paid off. When that happens, all the cash flow you were paying towards those debts now becomes an asset for you and moves back over, fills up any policy loans or equity that you have available here in your whole life insurance. And then it moves over, it fills up your money manager account. This is like the overflow in this case. And of course, you'll see on the blueprints, this is the time that they need to be thinking about starting new policies. It's very easy for the client to see that at this point. Now, once all the debt's gone, now instead of debt over here, you have investments that you might want to make. And notice here that the 30% of your income that was coming from the personal checking account, it was 10%, now it's 30%, because you don't have the 20% bleeding out to those debts on the right-hand side. Now that's coming directly to you. So we have the investments over here. Where are you going to get the money from the investments? Well, you can get it either from the money manager account or the whole life insurance policy, or a combination. Most often, we find the combination is often ideal. Depends on what type of investments and how often they're using that money outside of their system. So the investments, then they create the cash flow then to repay and make a cycle that returns that money back to you. This section right here that's highlighted, this whole lower section, you're going to see the same pattern on the blueprints. When we look at those, you're going to see the money manager account funds, money that's outside the policy on the left-hand side. You're going to see the policies in the center. And then you're going to see the investments or the debts, the cash flows on the right-hand side. And the money will flow from left to right across the blueprint. So that's the overview right here. Let's go through a few examples now. This is the one of the worksheets that we use to collect data, and this worksheet comes in PDF format and Excel format, and you'll get a copy of these here at the end. I'll show you how to get those. The 10/20/70 worksheet is where we collect information about the cash flow. So this is a moving picture. This one is information for your blueprint. This is a 2-page worksheet, so we go through what you make, what you own, any money that they have in tax qualified plans, investments, and what they owe. This section right here that's highlighted then comes over onto the blueprint software, and you'll see that section here in a minute. So the second form here that we looked at, with the one with the 2 pages, this is like a snapshot. The first one's like the cash flow. Together, we get an idea of their moving financial picture. Very important. When you open up the software, it is Excel based, so you're going to see this section right here, and you'll notice a lot of tabs down at the bottom. This is just one of the calculators that's in the system. Here's what's happening with the different tabs. You notice they're color coordinated. So the orange ones are calculators that you can use to get the data you're going to input into the software. They're tied to the system because we use them so often. It's nice to have them handy right there. But if you wanted to delete them, it's not going to have any effect on the rest of the tool. The blue section here, this is where you input information that's going to be included in the calculations. So we have several different sheets here, and then the green sheets are where you look at the results. And then over here, finally, we have some chart information, so you can actually create a visual overview for your clients to see. Super helpful, because when you throw up a spreadsheet in front of a client, if they're a visual person, that's not often a very good way to start. So the charts help them get the visual overview very nicely. Such a great teaching tool. Now, you don't have to use all of these tabs every single time. In fact, I do not. Usually what I will do, I will start with the 10, 20, 70. We'll look at their cash flow. Then we look at 4 of the blue tabs. I look at the capital tab. That's money outside the policies. I look at the policies. That's money. That's the illustration values. We actually copy them from an illustration. I'll show you how to do that at the end of the webinar. We have the debt priority. That's going to be the information that comes from the sheet that we just looked at that was highlighted at the end. That's their information. And we also have then their debt information. Once we figure out what priority, which one comes first, which one comes second, how they're going to focus on that, then this is where we put in all the details for that. You have fine-tuned control over the cash flow. You can add a debt at any point in time, an investment. So it's very flexible. That's the sheet you would do that on. And then you look at the results on the basic report. The detailed report is very similar to this one. It just has more columns available to choose from. The summary, I don't use that often anymore, especially now that we use the charts. So this is the basic overview. Here's an example of the 10, 20, 70 worksheet. And I'm going to get a pen here on the screen so I can draw some things out, point some things out here. So a client could fill this out. We have an Excel version, so they can put their own numbers right into this. They'll first of all put in their income over here, and then on this side, they put in all their expenses. And beside each one, they put either the frequency, so either monthly, annual, quarterly. I think we even have biweekly in there, semi-annual. And then they put in the number, the 10, 20, or 70 beside each expense. Now, this income right here flows through to here, and we do a 10, 20, 70 target on it. So we figure out what's 10%, what's 20%, what's 70%, and we show those numbers right here for you. That number is graphed right here. This is our target graph right here. So our target cash flow. This cash flow over here is put into this box, so it figures out our actual percentages of income and how much those are compared to the total amount right here. That's the number you see graphed over here on this side, and they're color-coded, of course, for us. So we can see right here that there's a little bit of extra cash flow available that we can do something with here. And so one of the ways you can do this is you can work on the sheet. We can add this whole new section right here. So in this case, they were contributing what is it, $560 some to the 401k. They decided to stop that, so we put that in as a negative number here. And then they are putting $835 a month toward a whole life policy, and then that leaves $200 extra that we can put towards paying off their debts right here. So that's how the 10, 20, 70 works. You can see that now over here, these columns are very balanced and very close to our target right here. So that's a nice way to balance cash flow. Now that we know that their cash flow is balanced, then we can take a look at the debts. And this is another example. All the names, the personal information has been taken out of these examples, so they're generic in that respect, but these are real examples that we have worked through. Something you'll notice here, this is the information on the debts. We listed them out here, and I've already prioritized them. So I put number 1, number 2, 3, 4. I'll show you how we do that here a little later, but I want you to notice something. Right here, the required payments versus the actual payments that they're making on each of these. They're making extra payments on several of these altogether. They're not focusing just on one. That's not very efficient. So that's why we ask, both what's required and what are you actually paying. and we can make some adjustments to this and show that extra cash flow in a different way on the blueprint that's a lot more simple, a lot easier to understand. So here's an example of the information we just looked at here put into the blueprint here. Now, I don't expect you to read the numbers on the screen right now. I just want you to look at the basic sections. Here we have, in the highlighted portion, we have the money manager account, what's happening with money outside the policy. Okay, we have the policy values here in the center, and we have the debt information. Doesn't that remind you of the visual overview we just went through? You can see the same thing happening right here. We'll go through some more of the details of this at the end of the webinar, but that's basically what's happening. What you'll notice here is he's able to pay off the debts in 13 months. That's the yellow line that you see in the center. But he's running completely bare on resources in order to do this in the first year here. He has nothing outside the policy, nothing that's available for a loan in his policy. He's taken max loan. He's using everything out of his money manager account. He really wants to keep an emergency fund on hand as he does this. So we go into the software. There's a place where we can put in a number that he wants to hold some of this money in reserve in his whole life insurance. We put that number in, and now we have this blueprint. Same sort of layout, only now it only took him 2 months longer to pay off the debts. Okay, and now he has a nice reserve during the first year in his policy too. So that's really nice. You can go in and put that information in almost on a month-to-month basis in the software. It's very fine-tunable. Here's another example. This couple were business owners, and we'll go through, and their income varied seasonably. So you'll see they put the required payments in here. There's nothing in the actual payment column. Over here, they have some notes. They're being pretty astute about managing this debt. They have a lot of it, even on credit cards, but they're keeping the interest rates fairly low by rolling to a 0% offer when the interest rates go up. So they're not able to do that on most of them right now. Of course, there's a fee every time they do that, but that fee is still less than the interest they would pay otherwise. So it's a good strategy. That's often a good strategy for other clients, that have credit card debt. They need to keep that interest rate low while they work on paying them down. It can be a good way to do that. But notice there's nothing here in the actual payment column in this blown up version. And we'll look at that a little bit further as we go. When we ran the scenario, we ran two different types. So remember, I talked about the range before. So we ran two different examples. We said, okay, what if you just pay the required payments? How long would it take you to pay this off? And then how long would it take you to repay your policy loans? The second one we looked at is we said, okay, what if you have an extra $3,000 a month to put into this? You see, this couple is business owners. Their business is very seasonal. So sometimes they have a lot of income, sometimes not so much. They were fairly confident they'd have at least $3,000 extra per month to put towards this. They just wanted to play it safe and said, well, what if we could only do the required? We want to make sure we're going to be able to keep our policy, pay off our debt, and do everything that we want to do, even if we have the bare minimum. But it's probably not going to be that way. So those are the two examples here. One in black, one in green here. If they do just the required payments, income is at a bare minimum, then they have 70 months till their debt is paid off, and then 110 months till the policy loans are paid back. So that gives them a nice range to think about there. If they could put an extra $3,000 a month towards this, then they have the debts paid off in 30 months and the policy loans after 52 months. So this was great. She could see this right up top here. Now, I had already done the scenarios behind the scenes. Now I'm showing this to her before we ever look at the scenarios, and you'll see why here in a minute. Here's what the scenario looked like. So if I throw this spreadsheet up on the screen in front of a client, these numbers are necessary. We have to have the calculations to back up what we're doing here, but if they can have the picture ahead of time in their mind, it's going to be so much easier. You still see the same sections on this graph, just a little more complicated. We have the policy information here, and we have the debts over here. Hey, but what's an even easier way that we can break this down to a client? In this case, it's doing a chart. So I can create these charts in the new software, drop them into a PowerPoint real quick. We'll go over the visual, and then we'll say, now let's look at the calculations that back these numbers up. I'll send them to the client. Maybe they'll never look at them, at least they'll realize what's happening, and they'll see how this works. Curtis, I see you have a couple questions. It looks like going back to the 10-20-70. You're asking net after tax and payroll deductions income. How do you address tithing? So that's going back to the 10-20-70 that we were just talking about. Good question. We usually use after tax income on the 10-20-70. And as far as the tithing goes, we'll take that out of the 70% generally. Some people like to tithe on gross, some people on net. Whatever you do, then we usually take that out of the 70%. People can taxes. You can choose which way you want to take it out. So you can take it out either before or after you put the number in onto the 10-20-70 sheet. We do have a place, and I'll show you when we get there. I'll show you when we get there about where you can put in deductions on the 10-20-70 before you actually run that comparison. That's would be where you could put in taxes if you wanted to. Some people like to include their taxes as part of the 70% too. So up to you there. So here the graph, here's how it looks. So when we graph these numbers out, we can show here's your debt, and you can see it goes down, right? It's paid off between 5 and 6 years here. And then the next line is the money manager account, money that's outside the policy, plus the net cash value that's in their policies. And we show that going along and then increasing once their debt is paid off, obviously. Then we can graph their net death benefit here. And by net death benefit, the software figured out, it said, okay, here's the death benefit on your policy, but you also have a policy loan outstanding. So it figures that out. It's graphing the net, what their heirs would actually get here. And then finally, we have the money manager account balance. Now, why does it start going up over here? Remember, this is money that's outside the policies. Right here, about year 8, year 9, the policy loans are paid off, remember? So now the overflow money, the cash flow they were used to paying is going into the site account. It's just sitting here in a checking account, money manager account. What can they do with that money? The answer is pretty obvious. It probably makes sense to start another policy with it, depending on what they're trying to do overall, right? So that's one option. We can point out to the client, right here, you're going to want to start some more insurance. So don't you think it would be a good idea? It might not be a good idea to start the whole life right now. You want to start some of it right now, but let's at least get some term insurance as well. So when you want to buy more policies here, you've locked in your insurability. That's a great way to show it to them. And then here's this one. If they can put an extra $3,000 per month towards it, you're going to pay off your debt a lot faster within 4 years here. And you can see the net numbers going up here, the money manager account, net cash value. You can see the net death benefit here, and you can see the money manager account. Hey, you're going to need a new whole life policy a lot sooner now, right here about year 4. So all the more, don't we want to get some term insurance to lock in so you can convert that term insurance or buy a new whole life policy at this time. So now once you have that, now you can go to the spreadsheet and they're ready to, they already have a visual picture of what this is going to look like. You can go through the details with them, and I'll show you how I present this to a client at the end here when we go into the details. But I want to stick to the concept for the conceptual people here on the line right now. Here's another example. This one's a little bit more complex. This one is this guy has lots of different cash flows and investments going on. And so if we look at this sheet, we see that there's some money in the money manager account, also in a business that he has. So we have LLC plus money manager account over here. Then we have the policies here. And then we have different types of expenses. So there is a debt that he wants to pay off here. There's some various travel and college expenses that are coming up in their family. They have some cars that they're financing. They also want to buy a new house. So you can see the new house that's highlighted down over here. And we can put all of these different options into the spreadsheet here. And what I ended up doing here, so he wanted to know what size policy should I get with these other things that I'm needing to get to accomplish here. And this guy is into the details, so he appreciates the numbers. They love to see this, but still, it's helpful to have the graph to put it all into perspective and then look at the numbers. We find that with nearly everybody that we show these to. So if they don't do a policy at all, just use a regular checking account, called that money manager account only, That's the orange line. If they add a policy, in this case we used $25,000 a year, then it's going to increase their overall results because they're getting that compounding growth in the policies. That money's just not sitting around all the time. So very good. They get a nice death benefit along with that. Now, something that he was looking at doing is he had talked to another agent who said, well, we should do a $55,000 policy. Put all your cash flow right now into a policy and then take loans, finance everything that you need to buy. Well, there's a balance here because he's going to have these loans outstanding for a long period of time. The policy loan interest is going to be building up on those. So there's a balance here. We don't want the policy loan interest to build up too big. And so what happens is we put the $55,000 policy in here, but you can see it's actually lower values here for the first 16 years or so, and then it doesn't grow that much higher. And let's look at why. We proposed another example to him, said, well, start with a smaller policy now. Then once you've taken care of all these expenses that are coming up, then you can start some more. And with that option, we're able to keep his values higher short term than the blue line, and we're able to go higher than the yellow line long term. He has a lot more flexibility this way. I'll show you why. Before I'll show you the policy loans behind the scenes on this here in a second, but in this case, we also want to look at the guaranteed values. So we showed them the projected values. The blue line here is projected to be higher, but are the guarantees really any higher than the green or yellow lines here? And so we put one of these together. I color-coded each of these numbers for you. And we ran another scenario with just the guaranteed values. We pulled the guaranteed values from the policies here, you can see. And we figured out the difference in his overall net effect. And so guarantees are actually higher with the smaller policy, number 2 here, than it is with number 3, very slightly, virtually the same, right? And the guarantees are actually higher overall if he starts small and then adds the new policy later. So this gave him the confidence here in what was happening. Here are the policy loans and why that was the case in this example. Again, you can create these charts right from the new software. Obviously, no policy loans in the first example. The second example, he takes some policy loans, pays them off after about 12, 13 years. The third example, with a much bigger policy, remember, he takes a lot more in policy loans. He doesn't pay them off in 30 years. You can see that. The fourth example, he pays off the policy loans 13, 14 years here. And then this right in this time frame right here would be when he's starting the new policy. But this was very revealing to him because when he looked at these numbers, he said, well, right here, when I'm at the peak of these policy loans here that I've taken, I'm going to have some more expenses coming down the pipeline. I know already. I'm going to have my kids are going to be going to college. I want to be able to fund some of that for them. And then somewhere along in here, 20 years maybe, we're going to want to retire, and we're actually going to be wanting to access this money, not having to be making interest payments on policy loans at this point. So he realized immediately why this was going to be the better option, to start small, get everything that he needs to be done, and then to add more policies as it's affordable when he knows what's going to be comfortable and affordable in the future. And so here we can see the value of all of those composited again. And that gives you kind of an overview, though, of what we can do with all the different investments. Let's go back to the spreadsheet real quick. Okay, this one right here, this is where we put it all together then. And we ran a few different examples of this. So we created one that was a baseline, and then we looked at different options, like how soon does he get his house? We moved that around a little bit. We looked at financing the college with student loans versus financing it out of pocket. How's that going to affect when he can do everything else that he wants to do financially? So we found that balance here. And this is a great example of a case that we would not have been able to close without having something like this. It gave him the confidence to be able to move forward. So in summary here, I want to tell you a little bit about the calculator, then we'll dive into the details. I know I've seen a few questions coming in as well. We'll get to those in the details section. So first, some information about running the software. There are some requirements to run it. You have to have a computer, a PC running Excel 2013 or later. It will work on a Mac. I'm running it here on a Mac, but I have to run it on Windows via Parallels, and I have to have the Excel app for Windows. And so if I have that, then I can run the software no problem. And Office 365 works just fine as well. You just have to download the version for your local computer. So that's the basic requirements for running it. When you open it the first time, you're going to see a license activation. You'll accept that. Then you'll get an activation code. The request number is right here, and you'll email that to me. I'll send you the activation code. You'll hit the Activate Now button. You'll put that number in right here, and then click the Activate Now. Now, the next time you open it, you'll get a request to enter the subscription code. The subscription code, you'll have 10 days to run the software before you put in a subscription code that will activate it then until the next, which will be January in this case, because there'll be an annual renewal that comes due in January. Okay, so that you'd put in the subscription code. Once you get that, you'll hit OK, and you're into the software. So the initial license for the software, the initial registration is $900. And the annual renewal in January then is going to be $300 then per year. It can pay for itself, because let's say if it's a 30% base, so you get paid mostly on the base part of the policy. So let's say that's $1,500. And if you're at a 60% commission rate, you might be higher depending on your level of production, bonuses, whatnot. There's your $900 right there. So it's nice, easy, and affordable. You'll be able to help a lot of clients with it. And if you can sell more than that, which I'm sure you can, if you can sell 7 times that, then of course it's even better. And that's the goal. So if all this software did for you, though, is to close that one prospect who wants to see the numbers, would it be worth it? It sure has been for us, and it's been valuable enough for me to put the time in to develop this tool, even if none of you want to use it after we're done today, which I think you will want to use it. Okay, some of you might be thinking, well, what about the time? Because there's going to be a learning curve to figure out how to use this, put in the information and whatnot. That's true. Do you have a client, though, who you're always having to resell? Because the software is also going to save some time. If you have one of those clients, maybe someone who calls you every other week with new questions and doubts, that costs time too. And we like to hear from our clients, but what if all this software did for you was to give that one client a tangible plan so they don't feel like they have to call you every week? That can help you save time. And if running software just isn't your cup of tea, then maybe you want to hire an assistant to help. So time really isn't an excuse, because yes, it's going to take some time to learn something new. There's a learning curve, but it's going to save time as well. And I can tell you, we've been able to make sales that we would have never been able to make with this software. We've been able to provide better service to our existing clients. We're able to transform them from happy clients into ecstatic clients, and that's always fun. And here's the thing too, people refer when they see results. Now, in our business, results tend to be more long-term. You've probably noticed that. So if you can show your clients results sooner, don't you think they're more likely to refer to you? I certainly think so. That's a hard one to measure, but I know we get a lot of referrals, and this software definitely helps us with that. So if all the software did for you was to boost your referrals by giving your clients more reason to refer to you, would it be worth it to you? Now, with the price of the software, the initial license is $900, but since we have the renewals coming up in January, what I can do for you is you won't pay the $900. I'll give you the August price, because we're almost to August right now. So if you email me this week or type into the chat box that you want this, then you put in the license. You'll get it for $725 today. Then you'll have the annual renewals in January. If you need to put it on more than one computer, like let's say your assistant's going to be using it, and Richard, I see you have that question as well. I'll be getting to some of your other questions a little bit later as well as we get to the details. Yes, you can put it on an assistant's computer. It's a separate license. So you just get 2 licenses, one for yours, one for your assistant's, and you're good to go there. Or if it's just going to be your assistant running it, you could have it run there. And it's really easy. If you have 2 copies, one on each computer, you'll be able to work on the same cases together, no problem, because the cases are stored in their own separate files. So anyone that has the software license on their computer can open and work with that case. You can even send it to me if you need, if we're working together on something, or to another agent if you're working on it with them. So long as they have the software, you'll both be able to open it up. Now, we also have some optional add-ons that you can do. There is a learning curve that comes with this system. So here are the optional add-ons that are available. You can do have me do a personal setup. Here in a few minutes, I'll walk you through how to download and use the system. It's how to get it set up on your computer. If you want me to do that for you and to give you a little walkthrough of how to get started, show you around once it's on your actual computer, then that's a 1 hour and $300 value. And if you want that, then I'll give it all to you for just $8.99 today. So you have the $725 software price plus the $300. You're a little over $1,000. You'll get it for just $8.99 if you take action today. The other option is if you want help with your first case. This is something I don't usually do. When I help an agent on a case, we usually split commissions because I don't like just trading time for money. And so if we're going to work together, I want a percentage, not just a flat fee. And so, but what I'll do is I recognize this is actually part of the software training here. So if you want help with your first case, that you're actually putting the numbers into the system, then we can do that. I just put a 2-hour maximum time limit on it, $750 value, and you get to keep all the commissions there then that you sell. So if we add all of those together, if you want both of those things, then we have a value of like $19.50 here. You can get it all, everything today for just $14.99. So those are the options that are available, and those prices you can either type in the chat box, which we want to do, or email me later today. I'll be in the office through Thursday this week, and then I'm going to be out of the office for the rest of the month. So if you email me by Thursday, I'll keep these prices for you. Also, up to 10 days after activation, we have a money-back guarantee. So here's how this works. When you do that initial activation, so you'll buy the software, you'll send me the request number, then we'll get the request number put in on your computer. And you can do this either this week and work on the software while I'm gone, or I'll be back in August, and then we can look at the then you can do the request then, and you'll be able to get a little bit of support, back and forth email or phone call if you have questions as you get started during those first 10 days. But let's say you go 10 days into it. I won't send you the subscription code if you want to try it out for 10 days. We'll just send you the activation code. You'll cancel out of the subscription code. You'll be able to use it for 10 days. And if you say, no, this is not something that's going to work for our office, then all you have to do is email me or call me before 10 days, because in 10 days, I'll automatically send you the subscription code. Once I sent it, then we can't do the refund. But before we send it, then you tell me this is not going to work for you, and we'll give you all your money back on the system. So these are the options. The software with optional add-ins. You can get just the software for just $725 today, or you can get the personal setup with it, $8.99, or you can get the personal setup and the help with your first case, $14.99, and that's the one package there for you today. Now I'm going to get to your questions, and then we'll go through some actual examples on downloading the software, how it works, and all of that good stuff. So we'll discard the ink here. All right, I'm going through the questions. Let's see. We got to your questions about the 102070, Curtis. Richard, will the net death benefit factor in any term riders? I'm assuming you're pasting in death benefit values from the illustration tool. This would then graph. Yes, you're correct, Richard. So if you're copying in the illustration values, then yes, it will reflect on the software as well, and the term rider dropping off if it's dropping off on the illustration. Conversion. All right. Will you see each policy separately on this spreadsheet outlay, or will you see a summary of all the policies mashed together? Another good question. I'll show you when we open up the software, Richard. The basic example, you can put in up to 5 policies. If you have more than that, then you can combine them, and we have a special tool for doing that on the software. You can put in up to 5 there, and when you do, the basic report will put them all together. If you want to see them separately, you'll go to the detailed report, and then we have columns for every one if you want to list them out separately. Usually I find that putting them all together works just fine. So that's how that part works. All right, so now let's open up the, I'm going to open the chat message. I'm going to put the link for you all to access the software. So you can go to this link. I'm going to do the same thing here, and I'll walk you through the process. So I open it up, I put in this link, and the link's in the chat box so you can click on it. You'll come to this page right here where you have all the download options. Now, let me increase the size of this a little bit, because I know some of you are on smaller computer screens. All right, so we have a few different options here. There's some keyboard shortcuts. You may want to download this document and print it. These are some shortcuts that will work in the software that helps make your work process faster. This is the actual application that you will open up to start the whole system. And this is a copy of the case file, the blueprint template file. This folder has the data sheets in it. And so the 102070 and the information for the blueprint that we looked at, that's the folder you'll download for that information. This one here, the 32-bit, you're probably not going to need that unless you're on an older computer. If you're on an older computer, it's a different version of this file that you may need to run it. So just download, just hit the button to download everything. And you'll see this screen that says download in progress. You won't click anything. It will automatically download, ask you if you want to save the file. I'll save it to my computer right here, and then we open it up. Now I'm on a Mac, but I'm going to set this up on the Windows side. So I pull up the Windows system. We're going to go to downloads, and I'm going to go to the shared selections here. Okay, that was my download. So here's the folder with everything I downloaded. Now, what you're going to want to do is you'll want to put this application in the folder where you want it to run from. This can be anywhere on your computer. You decide. If you're on a Mac, it should not be on the desktop or one of the shared locations. So I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to choose to put this on the C drive. If you're on a Windows computer, you can put it anywhere you like. So go to the C drive, and I'm going to create a new folder for this system. I'm just going to call it DP Blueprint. All right, so now we're inside this folder. And all I have to do is to take all of these files that I downloaded and drag them over here to the blueprint folder. So I do that. There we are. And then what you'll probably want to do is create a shortcut that you can put on your desktop or wherever you'll access this software from. So I'm just going to right click, and I'm going to create a shortcut right down here. And now this shortcut I can drag to my desktop. So the icon comes over with it, just like that. And the other thing then that I'll want to do while I'm in this folder is I'll take a copy of the DP Blueprint template. I'll put it here because this is the file I'm going to copy every time I need to do something. And then the keyboard shortcuts here, I probably want to print this one. And I may want a copy of the data sheets handy, so I might drag that out. I'll show you what's in it that way. Once I have that done, then we're back to the desktop here. Let me show you the data sheets first, and then we'll go into opening the software. So I open up the data sheets here. What do we see? There are 4 different folders or files, and there are actually only 2. One is Excel version, one is PDF version for people that don't have Excel. Sometimes they have a hard time opening the Excel. I always prefer to send people the Excel documents if they can open those. If they need to print out the PDFs, fill them out, fax them back manually, that's okay. It's just a little bit more data entry work on our end then. So I'm going to open up the 102070. You can see how that looks. Right, here's how it looks. This is the printout version. This is the actual interactive version. So if people can do the interactive, this is really cool. Sometimes this will help people with their cash flow even if they don't need a whole blueprint. So those tools are there. The information for blueprint, this is the file then that we look at. So it has their name, what they make, what they own, all the details, and finally at the very end they have their debt information, what they owe, right down here. All right, so now the first time I open up the blueprint system, I'm going to open up the file, and that's when the activation codes would come up. Now I'm going to bypass that because I've already registered it on this computer. Okay, so it's going to be very similar to the process you saw me go through there. But now this file is open. You'll see this welcome screen. So it'll have the Money Tools logo, say Debt Payoff Blueprint. You can now open your Blueprint files. Leave this file open in the background while working. That's what you want to do, because this file verifies all the cases that you open. So you can even minimize it if you like, but it needs to stay open while you're running the system. Jim is asking, can you enlarge the screen? Yeah, let me try to do that, Jim. It is kind of small. There we go. That should be better for you. So this is the file that'll first open up when you open this. Go to the File menu, and there's a couple things that you'll want to do to make the software run really smoothly for you. And that is, there's macros in these files. So if you go down to here to the Options tab, go to the Trust Center, and then the Trust Center settings. And you'll be able to refer back to the recording on this if you're doing this on your own, or that's part of the personal setup that we do in the first hour. Go to the Trusted Locations then. You can add a new location, and in this case, I would add the location where I save the software to, so the DP Blueprint location. Any files that are in that location will run without me having to give them permission to run every single time. So I click OK there. Another trusted location, I know I'm going to be working with a lot of client files that are on my desktop. So I'm going to add a new location that everything on my desktop can be pre-approved to run as well. Now what we need, I'm going to minimize this and we'll open up the actual system. And here's how this is going to work. If you have any questions as I'm going through this, go ahead and add them to the chat box. I'll be checking it as we go through. As long as it doesn't interrupt our flow here. And if I don't get to your question, then we'll come back to it, and I'll email you at the end. I have some examples that we'll be going through here. I'm going to pull these up one by one. Okay, so I open up this. I'm going to drag this to the other screen here. Just a second to position this. And then what we're going to do is see this copy, the file that's right here, the DP Blueprint. I'm going to take a copy of this, and I'm never going to modify the original file. The copy went to my other screen, so let me go get it for you. Here it is right here. So I'm always going to make a copy of this one, and we're going to name this example 1. So you can name it anything you like as well. You're going to open up this file. And this is going to go to my other screen, so I'm going to drag it over here as well for you. There we go. So in this case, if we were able to add that second trusted location, it would not have me, enable the content here. I just have to click the enable content if I don't have that trusted location. So it's an extra step every time. Here's the 10/20/70 example, and I'll run you through a quick example of how this works. And you saw some of this in the last video, but I'm going to paste the information in from wherever I received it from the client, and I'm going to put their income in then over here. So the 883, and that's going to be monthly income. So you can see that this graph changes automatically as I'm doing this, and I can see the target 10/20/70 and what their actual values are right over here. Now, when we want to do the redirection here, I can simply put in that negative number. I'll put that against the 10% account. And then I'm going to do the extra money towards debt payoff. That goes towards the 20%. And the money to the whole life, that's going to be part of the 10% category again. So I simply adjust that. We can see that their cash flow works out just fine. And we're ready to go forward from there. Now let's look at a different example. This one is an actual example that will follow through that's paying off different debts. So right here, we're going to copy all of these over. Okay, and I'm just right-clicking, pasting values most of the time here. And what this sheet does, and I'm on the debt priority sheet, by the way, now. These are the first two that I'll generally start with, 10/20/70 and then debt priority. What I'm doing here is I'm looking at a few different things. You can see the required payments are all in line here, and he's paying quite a bit of extra spread out across all these different payments. The way to go here is I'm going to add up everything he's paying here. Then I'm going to delete what he's actually paying. I'm going to put his required payments over to the actual payments column, because whatever I put in here is going to go over onto the calculations. From here, then, I'm going to go through and I'm going to prioritize how much, which debt comes first here. And we look at a few different factors for this. Number one, I look at the amount of the debt. How big is it? Okay, that's one factor. And I also look at the interest rate to start with. So this one is a very small debt, but it has a 0% interest rate. In this case, it's kind of hard to determine which one. So we can also look at the ratio, the cash flow ratio over here. This is the required payment compared to how much is outstanding. So it shows you the higher this number is, the more red, and it's even color coded for us, the more cash flow we're going to recover by paying this one off first. So it's a low balance. We're going to be able to pay it off fast, and I know we're going to recover a lot of cash flow. I need to make that number one. I already have these in order, okay, but I could do this in pretty much any order that I want. When I'm done, then I just come over here and sort debts, and it puts them all into the order that I have selected by the numbers that I put in over here on this side. So the next one I would look at, obviously this is the next lowest balance. It also has a very high interest rate. That's a good one to go after. So we do that. And in this case, it's going to, since I've already ordered it, then it's going to be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now, I could program this process, but I like the manual input in here because it's not always, it doesn't always work out this way. So sometimes you have to, you look through it, and it's nice to have the manual input at this point. Sometimes the client will say, well, no, I really want to pay this one off first. So you can put that a little bit higher on the list. And that's something you can't as easily program into the computer. Once you get all of this in here, then we go over here and we select configure debts. And this puts the information from this worksheet over onto the debt information, which we're going to look at here in a minute. It'll take a while here because it has a month by month thing that we can change here. Super nice, because in this particular case there were some special changes that we need to make. So that's done now. Now we go to the debts tab that's right down here. And this is probably fairly small on your screen, so I'm going to increase the size of it. We're going to scroll all the way over to the left. Here's what's going on. You can see that the date column doesn't mean much of anything. January 00 right over here. But what we're not focused on that right now. What we're focused on is each of these debts. Each debt has a set of columns. So this is the first debt, this is the second one, and so on. Any of the cells that are blank or that have the yellow or green fill in them, you can edit those. So when we come into this here, there were a couple changes specifically on this one that we needed to make. For example, on the PayPal debts, let's move over there. And what I'm going to do here, since as we move over, we lose these columns. So I'm going to simply freeze the panes right here, and we're going to move over. Right here on the PayPal debt right here, this is a 0% interest rate, but it's only 0% until month 5, and then it goes to 12%. So I'm going to put 12% in here. And then I need to carry that all the way down. I can use one of the keyboard shortcuts, Control D, and it carries that all the way down, just like that. And then we move over. There's also on the Macy's card, this one's at 0%. And we need to move down. This one's at month 7. All right, this one has an interest rate that also goes to 12% at month 7, so we put that in. And then there were a couple debts that we needed to clarify his cash flow on. And so I think they ended up being the required payments. If we go back to the debt priority, notice that originally he had $80 and $132 here. So he was actually paying less than what was required. Okay, it turns out he was actually paying the required payment, so we had to adjust that into the cash flow there. But if we needed to make any changes here, we would be able to do that. Let's move back over here to the left-hand side. I'm going to take a quick break for a couple questions coming in. Jim says, will you have video tutorials on setup and operation? This is going to be the video tutorial on that setup, Jim. So if you'll be able to come back and refer to the recording on this to start with. I'm sure we will have additional videos as time goes on. Richard says, I sent you a screenshot. Wouldn't let me run the macros. Did the trusted location part have to go, okay, sounds good, Richard, so I'll help you with that. Send me an email and we'll work on that. All right, so with the debts, we have pretty much this debt information put in now. Now what we want to do is we want to go over to the capital section. Now this is money that's outside the policy, remember? And we also have the cash flow that they were making on all these debts. So we have a few different things to put in here. Right here, let's start with the date. We'll put in July 2019 here, and that changes all the date references all the way down so we can see what month and year we are at any point in time. Right here, they're starting out with $4,000 that they have in savings, so we put that number in. That's outside their policy. And they also have now the cash flow that we figured out that they were making in extra payments spread out on all their debts. We're going to combine that all right here. It's $1,070 per month that they have extra that's discretionary here. So we're going to carry that all the way down, again with the Control-D shortcut. We're able to do that. These columns show how much we've put in cumulatively outside the policies. This column here shows how much is in the money manager account. It'll also be on the final spreadsheet. If we wanted funds that we're putting in over here to pay premiums on any of the policies, we can select that here, and those premiums will be paid out of this account. So that's a nice way to go. We're not going to use that here. Let's go to the next example. The next one here is where we put in the policy information. Now, putting in policy information is pretty easy here. You can do in-force policies, or you can do new policies that you're running here. So we can put in example 1 as this policy's name. This is just for our tracking purposes, so we know which policy is which. And I actually have all the numbers on this already put in. So let me just copy these over, and then I'll also show you how we do it on a directly from an illustration too, because that's important. So we're going to copy this. We're going to come right in here, and we're going to paste these numbers in. Now, this was an in-force policy, so we use policy year 0. This is the current year for the in-force illustration. Now, the number of premiums per year, we always put annual premiums in here because that's how we're copying it off the illustration. Then I can put the number of the premiums in here. So I'm going to do 12 premiums. And we're going to carry this down, 12 premiums per year. We also have this loan rate over here. This company is at 5.25% interest. I'm going to carry this down. I can either drag it like this, or the easier way is just to click the last cell, hit Control-D, it carries it all the way down. And I can also select right here the loan rate. Is it going to be in advance, or is it going to be in arrears? In this case, it's in arrears. The current cash value, the numbers we put in here, this is going to be the amount that's available for a loan right now, plus anything that is already out in an outstanding loan balance. This is like the cash value from the illustration. Sometimes that's a little bit different than the amount on the in-force illustration. In this case, it was 732, so I'm going to put that number in here, and the loan balance is 22,322. So he has an outstanding loan already on this policy. So we're showing him how he can pay the debts out now that he has as well. We put a $10,000 hold in here. That means it's going to try to hold at least this much money during the first few years as his emergency fund, not going to let us take a policy loan above and beyond what's already out. So that's how we would put in a policy. If you're copying it from an illustration, let me open up an example of an illustration real quick. Close this one. Let's get this one up here. Here's an example of an illustration, and I have closed out all the detailed values. Okay, something you can do, if you go to select numbers on an illustration, it's going to select row by row generally. That's not what you want when you're copying numbers in here, so you'll want to select just the column. So you hold the Alt key down on your keyboard, your cursor changes a little bit. You can see that right there, and then you can select just the numbers off the illustration. We'll just do the first 25 years here. We'll copy this, and then we can move over and put this in as the premium on a policy right here. We paste just the text, and those values come right over. So we would do that for the premium column. We do it for cash value, death benefit. If we're using guaranteed cash values, you just have to put the cash value in. If you're using non-guaranteed, also put the dividend in, because the dividends usually aren't paid to the end of the year. So if you're using the projected values, you're taking a loan at the beginning of the year, then we need to subtract out the dividend and hold back the interest in advance for the first year, generally, if the insurance company is charging interest in advance. So that's where the dividend comes in. You put the number of premiums per year, put in the loan interest rate, whether they charge in advance or arrears right here, put in any of the information that is applicable, and that's pretty much the process. It's very easy. You have up to 5 policies that you can input on this worksheet, just scrolling over to the right. If you have more than 5, what do? Well, there's this right down here. You see policy combo worksheet. It's in the orange. You can open it up here. You can put the policy values that you want to combine in here. You put up to 5 or 6, I think, in this one. And then all the results show up right here in this combo, that you can simply copy the numbers from the gray section here and then put that in as a single policy, even though it's really a combination. It allows you to add additional policies on here. We usually don't have to include that many on the examples that we're doing. So that's one way to get the information in here. Let's see, we have the capital information in, we have the policy information in, we have the debt information in. So now, at this point, we're ready to go and look at this report. And this is the basic report. This is the blueprint that's all completed here for us. Now, there's probably still a lot of columns in here that we don't need to show to the client. For example, just look at this section. This is showing what's happening with all the money that's that the client is working with outside the policy. This isn't in the policy. So the money comes in this month. There wasn't anything in this column or this column right now. Right here, this is how much is free, available either to pay off debt, to go to policy loan repayments, whatever. In this case, this column shows that we're putting it towards paying off the debt, and there's nothing left in the balance column. So we do that for a few months, and then once the debts are paid off, then we switch over to the repayments, to repaying the policy loans, until that's done, and then the money actually starts building up in the money manager account. Most of the time, I'm not going to show all these columns to the client, so we'll just simply hide those. You can either select them like I just did, click and drag to select the columns you want to hide. You can use Control-H to hide those, just like that. Now we just have the money coming in and what's left over that we didn't use. Here are the policy columns. Again, I don't want all of these columns, so I'm going to come in here. I'm going to hide that one. And sometimes you will want some of these columns, like the money manager plus what's in the policy. You want to put all of that together. In this case, I really don't need net death benefit. I do want net cash value. So in these, I think I'll probably keep these columns. So we have policy outlay. We have policy loans, any loans that we're taking. We have what the net cash value is, the policy loan balance. This takes what's outstanding already, carries it on. Cash value and death benefit and illustration. I'm going to hide these 2 columns. These are for extra cash flows. And then we have all these columns for the debts. Okay, 2 for each one. I'm going to make these a little wider so all the numbers have room there. And we're going to wrap the text on the top line. So you can see it does help to have a little bit of knowledge of Excel as you're using this. Okay, so you're doing some different things. We didn't use all the debts over here, so I'm going to hide the last 2. And I might make the notes column a little bit bigger. Okay. So then the only thing that remains to be done on this sheet then is to spruce it up. You know, we might want to highlight this column when they paid off all their debt. So we could do that in light yellow. We could say they're out of debt right here. Then we might scroll down and say, oh, they paid off their policy loan right here. And so I would highlight that. Now you notice we scrolled down here and we lost the column headers. Now, when you're presenting to a client, that's kind of confusing to them. So if we just come right up here, go to the View tab, we can freeze the panes on this. Now we can scroll down, the column headers will stay there. So we can scroll down and we can say, okay, so right here, December 2021, you've paid off your policy loan. Now you have extra money that's building up over here. Isn't this a good time to start another policy? So you seeing how this works? It's pretty neat. Now, remember right here, here's the reserve. You notice he doesn't take a loan to pay off the debt any faster in this case. The reason that he isn't is because back on the policies sheet right here, see right here how we put a $10,000 hold? We said don't take a policy loan until he has 10,000 on reserve here in the policy. Well, he didn't until the debt was already paid off. So if we took these numbers out, now he will take a loan before the reserve is completely met. Now you see he takes a policy loan here in month 1 and also in month 12. It helps pay off the debt a little bit sooner. He's now out of debt in 12 months, 12, 13 months, right in there, instead of 15. Okay, but he has nothing on reserve. So that's where we were able to go right in. We were able to put in, we don't want to take a policy loan for the first few years here. Let's make sure that his debt's paid off and he has a reserve. And now we have the result that we show here. So that's how you can fine-tune things on the different examples. Now, let's close out of this example. We'll save it. Okay, and let's get a new example. Copy and paste this one. I'm going to go get it, bring it over from the other screen. Here we go. This is going to be example 3. So we kind of did 2 in 1 there. All right. So if you open up one of your worksheets and you see this, don't panic. This is one of the safety features on it. You have to enable the content here. But if you see this, it might be a sign to you forgot to enable the content. Enable the content, and then it does all the calculations and everything comes back to normal. All right. So what's happening with this one? This is the business owner, remember. We put in all their debts over here. And this is the one where they were just paying what was required. If we look at their 102070 worksheet right here, you can see their income in here. You can see the finance charges, their debt payments. You see some taxes down here, and then a bunch of other miscellaneous living expenses. Now, when I started looking at this sheet, I thought, well, wait, they're spending more than they make here. You can see this bar is way higher than this one. And so we're able to go back, and I was able to look at this in a little more detail. The finance charges, the interest that they're paying, that really is a non-issue because we're going to calculate that here on the spreadsheet, so we can take that out. They probably do have some fees as they're transferring their credit cards. This debt payment, it came out in the personal conversation with them that this actually includes some business debt as well. And so we made an adjustment for that a little bit further down. You'll see that. The taxes also were mostly coming out of the business. They weren't counting that toward their personal income, even though they were paying the taxes personally. So we have a few things to adjust here. If we did include part of the taxes, because part of it was personal, okay, and we included part of the business debt, okay, if we make those changes, we just adjust the 20% for the part that was coming out of the business with the negative number, and we put the life insurance premiums in here. Okay, now we look at the graph. Still looks a little bit out of balance, but here's the thing. Okay, we see the target is 175, and they said, yeah, we put that number in on the 102070 sheet because we wanted to look at worst case scenario. 200,000, that is actually closer to what we're spending. We're likely to make that or more every single year. So they felt comfortable in using this as the actual base for their 102070 principal. They're comfortable saving more than 10% while they pay off their debt because their debt payments are comfortable right now, as a lot of it's coming out of the business. They want to get those paid off, but they also know that they need to save for their future because they haven't saved very much up to this point. So 17% is a good balance here. We go over to the basic report, and this is one of the ones that you don't want to pull up on the screen before they have some sort of visual overview. Yeah, we can see the same sort of thing is happening. We have their policy values here, and we're paying off debts, but there's just a lot of numbers here, right? This is where the charts come in. So we come down over here. I jumped over too far. I'm used to using a slightly bigger screen. So let me minimize this down a little bit so you can, no, I should keep it big, and then we'll scroll over to the chart. So what we did, we can graph the different values right here. You can see the first graph line is graphing the money manager plus the net cash value. Next one graphs the net death benefit. This one I would like to graph the amount of the debt. So I come down in here and I select the debt for the current blueprint. Now I could bring results from other blueprints in. That's what the 2, 3, 4 in this case stands for. You can do 5. You just have to combine it a little bit differently. That's an advanced feature. So the debt here, what I can do is I can put that debt number in. It'll graph it right on the graph for me. And then over here, I want to look at just the money that's in the money manager. Again, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to select 1 MMA. All right, we scroll over, and this is now the chart that you were looking at. I showed this one very similar to it in the PowerPoint. This line right here, I might decide, hey, I want this to be blue, so I can very quickly change that. I can come right in here and change it to blue. Select it. I can give the chart a name. I can copy it out and put it into a PowerPoint and make each one of these lines draw separately if I want to do that. And then let's say I don't want all these other lines showing down here. So I have the chart selected, and I can come over here and I can just change the selection for the data that I'm graphing. So I can just drag that blue line over, just select the columns that actually have data, and now my graph is done. So I simply copy this, put it into my PowerPoint, give it a new name, and I'm done. If I want to bring in data from other blueprints, this is the data from the current blueprint in the gray here. I can copy and paste the data from another blueprint, from a third blueprint, and from a fourth blueprint right in here, and then I have those columns available to select right here as well. So very nice way to do that. So I'm going to close out. Let's look at a couple of things while we're in this one, actually. What about when they have that extra $3,000 a month? So I can put $3,000 a month in here, and we can carry that down. And then we can go look at the details and how that affects the blueprint differently. So you can see the debts are now getting paid off a lot faster, and you can see that the policy loans get paid off faster too. You can see the policy loans paid off right there at month 52. Just like we were looking, and you can see the last debt was paid off right here, and we didn't freeze our columns, so we have to go back over month 41 here in this case. Let's look at one other example for the, and I think I have this example ready so we don't have to input all the details for it again. Let's open up this one. Yes, here we go. Now let's say that you want to send charts to clients. Okay, you want to send this page to a client. Well, you can't just send it right off because they're not going to have the software and it's not going to open up properly for them. So we have all these different formulas in here. So something you can do when you need to send this to a client is just right click, copy the report sheet that you want to do, copy it to a new workbook. So that copies everything over. The formulas are still here though. So in this new one, then I would select all, I would copy it, and then I just right click, I paste the values. That's what we do. It looks exactly the same, but now the formulas aren't there, just the numbers. So you can save this to the client's file. You can email it to them, whatever you want to do. All that data will be here. So that's how you send multiple sheets. You can actually put them all in the same document then, so they can compare them very quickly instead of having to filter through all the different sheets. So that works perfect. Close out of this. This is the guy that had the more complex cash flow, where we put in his policies, his business cash flow, and then we did all the different things he wanted to purchase. Where you're going to see these values input is a couple different places. One on the capital sheet and one on the debts sheet. So if we look at the capital sheet, let's increase the size of this a little bit. You can see that we have a lot of different cash flows, and they vary month by month. Okay, so we come down here. When he buys his house, they jump way down because now he needs some of that cash flow to go toward the house payment. So we have to balance all this sort of thing. So how do we get the numbers that we're going to put in here? We simply do a different worksheet. We add up all the cash flows, and we figure the sum total over here. And if you're familiar with working with Excel, you know how I did this. Okay, but that's one option. When you get into more advanced blueprints, you can put in all the expenses that they're going to have coming up. You can get the actual cash flow that you can put in here on the capital sheet. Notice also on this one we had the system pay the premium from these cash flows, pay the premium on policy 1. And if you actually run out of money in this column, it will go negative to alert you that you need more funds there. But you can see that, let's say that, for example, we wanted to pay the premium on policy 1, but only to here, to month 18. Well, you can come in and put a 0 here, just like you see in the other columns, carry that down, and now that's going to Now it will only pay the premium for the first 17 months. Of course, if we want to continue it all the way out, we'd leave that the way it is. The other thing where you're going to see the results is here on the on this column. So you're going to see the value that we put in here. You're also going to see, let's go up a little bit higher. There we go. Now we move over to these debts, and you can see that rather than actually putting in as a debt each time, we put in a new amount. Okay, so this is just a cash flow at this point, an expense or an investment even. We move over a little further. This now was the education that they had coming up every few years, 30,000, or actually every few months for a couple of years. Okay, and in this case, they were financing at 6%. Okay, and we also have a hold on this. Okay, notice that $150,000, we go up here, there's a hold on that. That means we're not paying it down below $150,000 with any of the extra cash flow that's available. That's because he wanted to save it up for some other things that he was doing. Like over on this side, he needed to buy a house, $100,000 down payment, $400,000 on a mortgage right here. And so you can see these numbers then are carried down as well. You can see the percentage rate on that mortgage, the payment on it, and we put a hold of $400,000 on this as well because he didn't want to make extra payments on the mortgage. This is a good rate. It's actually less than the rates on his policy loans, so he doesn't want to rush to pay that mortgage off in this case. All of that combines to create the scenario then that you see here, then that shows him the different examples. We ran several variations of this. So we said, well, what if you pay for the college or out of your pocket? Is that going to give you enough left over for your new home when you want to buy it? In this case, he was able to buy it in year month 27, 28. What if you buy your home sooner? How is that going to affect your cash flow? So we put those examples together for them, and that really helped on this case. So that gives you an example of some of the detailed cash flows. You can use this tool in a simple way, or you can go complex. There's lots of different ways that you can use it. Any questions? I'm going to take a look over here at the chat box. And again, if you want this software, send me an email or type into the chat box. Let me know which option is going to work best for you and how you want to be able to use this in your practice, and we'll work with you from there. I will be out of the office next week, like I said, so if we're able to set it up this week before we go, great. If not, then we'll connect when I get back in August, and we'll be able to get you up and running then. So this is a way you're going to be able to help a lot of your clients really well. So have a wonderful day. This is the formal end of the webinar. I will stay on for a few minutes to answer any questions in the chat, and we will go from there. Have a wonderful day.